all these aromatase enzymes which are floating through the body, being more prominent in body fat areas, are now happy. A lot of testosterone and a lot of stuff to convert. So you're going to get a lot more estrogen than you probably expected. The Vigorous Steve here. So after a couple of years of training and half-natty bodybuilding, you're finally ready for your first cycle. And after 10 minutes of research on the forums of steroids.com, you've come to the conclusion that your first cycle is going to be 500 milligrams of testosterone enanthate per week, 250 milligrams Monday, Friday, for example, or Sunday morning, Wednesday evening, very common. And then you do the DIANABOL Kickstart to get your hormone levels peaked as soon as possible. 30 milligrams DIANABOL per day, week 1 to 4. Because it takes 4 weeks for testosterone enanthate levels to reach peak serum concentrations. And you want to get big in a hurry, so you're going to do the cookie cutter first cycle that's plastered all over the steroid forums. Even though this cookie cutter first cycle was probably designed 20 years ago, or maybe 10 years ago. I can't remember how long this cookie cutter first cycle has been going around the boards and nowadays on YouTube as well. So this video is here to discourage you from these kinds of practices and offer you an alternative instead that is certainly a lot more sustainable, will give you similar results, if not better results, for a lot less side effects. Before we get into it, please like the video, leave a comment for the algorithm, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. Now, let me give you guys a little bit of an insight of what's going to happen when you take 500 milligrams test plus 30 milligrams DIANABOL per day. Again, I've never done this first cycle. I've never recommended this first cycle to anybody, whether those are clients or people at the gym, people that I've talked to, because I've read so many cycle logs of these kinds of first cycles that usually around week 8, there's a ton of intolerable side effects, sometimes causing the person who's writing a cycle log to discontinue the cycle or have to go in for blood work or has to make all kinds of adjustments that he shouldn't have to do within his first cycle, right? You're supposed to have a good experience. You're supposed to have gains and make progress and not only have progress for the first 2 weeks. And then the remainder of the last 6 weeks that you're still frantically trying to balance the results against the side effects. It's mostly crisis management because the dose is way too high and the selection of pharmacology, it's very outdated. So let's get into it. Let me give you guys a description of what's going to happen when you start with a cycle like this. First, you're going to get the post-injection pain. Virgin muscle always gets post-injection pain. It doesn't matter if you inject the highest quality, the most pure, the most pharmaceutical grade testosterone enanthate or cypionate or propionate. Well, propionate in many cases will give most people some post-injection pain, whether they have virgin muscle or not. So let's say you go with an testosterone ester with a higher lipophilicity and a longer active life, longer half-life, being the enanthate or cypionate. Virgin muscle is going to get post-injection pain. There's no way around this. This is going to happen regardless of dose. But you're going to, or you would be able to reduce the post-injection pain by having a lower injection volume. Now, you can do that in 2 ways. Let's say you want to go on 500 milligrams a test, which is 2 milliliters of testosterone enanthate, or about 2.5 milliliters testosterone cypionate. You can space it out over daily injections. And this is also going to help with estradiol and dihydrotestosterone balance, because the more frequent you inject, the more stable serum testosterone concentrations are going to be, and the less potential aromatization or 5-alpha reductase activity you're going to have. So now you get less side effects, your hormone levels are more stable, you probably get less acne, less water retention, you might still get hair loss, but again, you'll have to look into your genetic makeup if you're prone to hair loss, and all you have to do is look at your father or your mother or your grandparents. Daily microadministrations, especially at your first cycle, will teach you how to inject faster, because instead of doing 2 injections per week, Monday and Friday, for example, now you're doing them every day. This also teaches you how to inject different body parts, whether those are the quads, the shoulders, the glutes, the lats, wherever you want to start injecting. And again, if you're going to do the quads, make sure it's pharmaceutical grade, not underground labs. We've seen this happen 1,000 times over in the fitness industry. If you have an infection in the quads, that usually doesn't turn out too well. So make sure it's pharmaceutical grade, and there's plenty of test annotate or test cypionate available under pharmaceutical grade quality and under prescription. You go with daily micro injections. The injection volume is lower compared to biweekly injections. And now you also have less post-injection pain, but you're also removing the virgin muscle. You're allowing your skeletal muscle to get used to having a foreign body injected into it, right? That's what we're doing. We're piercing the skin. We're going as deep as possible with the administration needle. And then we inject a testosterone annotate or cypionate in grapeseed oil or coconut oil or sesame oil or whatever carrier oil of choice that you went with. A smaller injection volume results in less post-injection pain. And if you do that every day, you get over this road bump that is post-injection pain due to virgin muscle. Usually it takes about 4, 5, 6 injections of each muscle, each injection site before you get over this post-injection pain. So regardless of dose, whether you start very conservatively with a 200 milligram or 250 milligram testosterone first cycle or 500 milligram first cycle, ideally, you space those injections apart. You keep the injection volume low. You learn how to inject. You minimize the post-injection pain. Over time, you'll get used to it. So whatever route you decide to go with after watching this video, the post-injection pain will be there. But don't worry, over time, your body will get used to it. The body will start to accept the oil. And the post-injection pain is no longer present. Week 1 is usually good. Week 1 is usually sweet. Every workout you're getting stronger. Every workout is more enjoyable. And usually by day 5 or so, you start to notice a pump during the workout. That's mostly from the DIANABOL. Again, it takes a little while for the testosterone annotate to be metabolized, raise serum concentrations of testosterone, estradiol, and dihydrotestosterone. And that takes a little bit longer. That's why these DIANABOL Kickstarts were put in place, so you can get results in a hurry. And it usually happens around day 5. Now, day 5 is sweet, day 6, day 7, etc. It's all good. You're finally on top of the moon. You're lifting weights that you've never lifted before. The water tends to start to come up a little bit, but so far it's manageable. That's week 1. Week 1 is all good, besides the post-injection pain. Then week 2, the side effect starts to manifest. Now you've been on DIANABOL, 30 milligrams per day, for already 7 days. And the methyl-estradiol is starting to accumulate. DIANABOL converts into methyl-estradiol, or aromatases into methyl-estradiol, which is metabolism resistant. It gets excreted from the body at a far lower rate compared to the estradiol, which is aromatized from testosterone. So now all this methyl-estradiol is slowly building up in the bloodstream. Keep in mind that methyl-estradiol doesn't fulfill the same physiological functions as estradiol itself. It's closely related, but it's not bioidentical. This methyl-estradiol is now changing the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, causing water retention. The hormonal fluctuations might contribute to acne if you're prone to it. And again, keep in mind that it's compounding on top of the ever-increasing estradiol, which is now being aromatized from ever-increasing serum concentrations of testosterone. Again, even if you do daily administrations of testosterone annotate or cypionate, it's going to climb. Serum concentrations are going to climb. And as serum concentrations are climbing, so does the potential for aromatization, even if your body fat levels are low. And again, your aromatase enzyme activity is based on natural endogenous testosterone production. To have adequate amounts of estradiol, you might have a lot of aromatase activity for the amount of testosterone that you have. And then when you go on supraphysiological dosages of testosterone, all these aromatase enzymes which are floating through the body, being more prominent in body fat areas, are now happy. A lot of testosterone and a lot of stuff to convert. So you're going to get a lot more estrogen than you probably expected. Of course, we can put an aromatase inhibitor in place, like an anastrozole, Arimidex, or exemestane, Aromasin. Or perhaps you go with diindolmethane because you feel that Dianylmethane 200 milligrams per day is going to be sufficient with estrogen balance when you're on 500 tests and 30 milligrams of DIANABOL per day. Which, trust me, it won't be. It won't be sufficient. Your estradiol levels will still be sky high. There's only so much you can metabolize into estriol and esterone. And there's only so much you can excrete by optimizing the glucuronidation process by taking calcium deglucarate. So again, you're going to have an aromatase inhibitor in place, whether that's Arimidex, Aromasin, or tamoxifen, right? One of the metabolites of tamoxifen is also a very potent aromatase inhibitor. And well, tamoxifen, the other two metabolites are very potent in blocking the estrogen receptors. So at least you won't get gyno. But now you're on 3 compounds at least, whereas you wanted to start with 2. You might even get a little bit of issue regarding your libido. Again, it's a significant bump in estradiol and methyl-estradiol concentrations. So whereas in week 1, estradiol is going up and you notice a boost in libido because this overall hormonal effect in your body is now increasing at a very rapid rate. In the first week, you get a good libido. In the second week, it might already be tapering off. Again, some people notice an increase in libido on this protocol after, or for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, maybe even. But everybody's different. So you see that some guys in these cycle logs that were documented on steroid.com is that people already get side effects regarding libido and erectile dysfunction after 2 weeks, 4 weeks, right? And there's no picture. So how high are their body fat levels? We don't know. Are they smoking weed causing an increase in prolactin, which can also have a negative effect on your libido and all these other compounding factors. So it's always a little bit difficult to determine whether that's the testosterone and the DIANABOL combination for a first cycle. But it's still worth considering that some of these side effects might manifest quite rapidly. And by the end of week 2, many people, what I read over and over again, due to this increase in water retention, cascaded from the estradiol, the testosterone, and the methyl-estradiol, and the DIANABOL, right, they all potentiate a little bit of water retention, mineral retention by themselves, is that the lower back pumps already start to manifest. And now these workouts that were getting more enjoyable, getting a better pump, you're getting stronger, you're getting more noticed in the gym because you start to volumize, especially during the workout, are now highly unenjoyable because between every set you need to sit down because those lower back pumps are excruciating. Excruciating. It's like an erection on the other side of your body that is the opposite of pleasurable. Really, that's how a lower back pump and how severe it can be. I've had these kinds of lower back pumps when I didn't understand about taurine supplementation and keeping track of my electrolytes. Again, if you decide on a 500 milligram test annotate first cycle and a DIANABOL kickstart, you probably also don't know about the taurine and the electrolyte balance and everything else that you need to pay attention to mitigate these kind of side effects. So that's something you can definitely expect from a combination like this. The lower back pumps, perhaps the shin splints while walking, right? You're going to the grocery store and by the end of your shopping spree, you can't even move. Because the shin splints are astronomical and you need to sit down again. You need to sit down at the grocery store. You need to sit down walking public transportation and you need to sit down at the gym because the pumps are legendary in places you did not expect. Something to keep into consideration, guys. Usually by week 4, a decent amount of side effects have already manifested, but hey, it's your first cycle. You still want to continue. You'll take it in strides. The post-injection pain is usually already gone by the time your virgin muscle is now adapting to frequent administrations, whether that's biweekly or daily. The water retention is quite severe. The acne might be present, but that slowly starts to taper off as you take the DIANABOL out, right? Serum concentrations of testosterone have now reached peak levels, and you don't need the DIANABOL anymore to cruise along further in your cycle. Now, your cycle is probably going to last 13 weeks. Again, that's the cookie cutter length of a first cycle. 500 milligrams testosterone annotate for 13 weeks, 3 months, nice on the calendar. DIANABOL kickstart week 1 to 4. And then, of course, week 15, 16 is ACG. And then the rest is Nolvadex and Clomid. And make sure you have your post-cycle therapy ready from the beginning in case you need to abort. And going by those cycle logs, many guys are considering aborting after week 4. Many guys are like, man, I did not expect all these side effects. Now, again, it's not like you're not going to get any results from this cycle. You will certainly get results. You'll get stronger. You'll look bigger. You'll get a better pump. You'll accrue a lot of new muscle tissue, especially if you're doing this in a context of pushing against your natural potential and you're not really making any progress anymore, even though you've got everything in place, the training, the diet, the health supplementation, the lifestyle, right? Not missing meals, not missing workout sessions, and you got your hypertrophy plan and your deloads and everything. Really, you got everything in place to make as much progress as possible. And then you sprinkle in a little bit of steroids, whether that's 500 milligrams a test with a 30 milligram DIANABOL Kickstart or far lower than that. You're going to make significant results, right? And some people are able to deal with the side effects a lot better than the next guy. Usually the guys with a little bit more experience, a little bit more hard work under their belts. They're certainly able to recruit this 500 milligrams a test far better than the guys who did not yet put in the work and they think they're stagnating, but with a couple simple adjustments, they would be able to proceed with another 3, 5, maybe even 10 pounds of actual muscle tissue. So again, the starting point is going to be different for everybody, right? I started steroids after 11 years of natural training, and I'm sure I could have put on a couple more pounds if I had the information that I do right now. The results will be there on 500 milligrams a test with your DIANABOL Kickstart. You'll get stronger, bigger. If you're managing your calories, you might be able to recomp significantly, right? Because you're getting more muscle tissue, which is going to increase your metabolic rate. And as a result, your ever increasing strength is going to far accelerate above what your strength is going to go down to because you're creating a gap between your caloric expenditure and your caloric intake. So let's say you start your first cycle at 3,000 calories, which was maintenance at your maximum natural potential. And now as you accrue more muscle tissue, you get stronger, and you're getting stronger at a very fast rate. You're simply creating a gap. You're creating a caloric deficit for yourself because you're training harder. You get more muscle tissue, and your metabolic rate goes up as a result of that. So you should be able to recomp very, very nicely. Now, the trick here is how much of these results that you're going to get on a 500 milligram test cycle with the DIANABOL Kickstart, how low can we pull the dose down for comparable results? Because you can only build so much muscle tissue at the same time. And that's why we have additional side effects. It just means that the dose was higher than your skeletal muscle is able to recruit. Now, the harder you're trained, the more you pay attention to your diet, your health supplementation, right? You put everything into place before you started your first cycle, you can recruit a higher dose. I felt I was ready to recruit about 250 milligrams testosterone NAD per week when I did my first cycle. Did I do daily administrations? No. I did bi-weekly administrations. Nobody was talking about micro administrations 10 years ago. Would I do that if I were to start a first cycle now? Probably not, because I'm doing a comparable dose, also with bi-weekly administrations. But again, I don't really have virgin muscle, and the post-injection pain never really bothered me too much because I always stuck with pharmaceutical grade, or the majority of my performance-enhancing drug journey. Now, let's say you start with 250 test, and that's the maximum amount of testosterone that your body can recruit, and perhaps considering another oral on top. Maybe you can build that muscle maximally on 250 tests, or 200 tests, or 150 tests, or right, whatever a dose of test you feel comfortable with starting with, depending on where your endogenous testosterone production is at. Okay, if you're like at 1100 nanograms per deciliter, which is quite high, most people will be 700, 600, 500. I've seen 300 nanograms per deciliter. If you're at 300 nanograms per deciliter and you have a decent physique, maybe doubling that to, or tripling that to 1,000 nanograms per deciliter will already yield very good results without too many side effects, or at least manageable side effects. And for that, the dose can be a fraction of a guy that has 1,000, 1,500 nanograms per deciliter natural testosterone concentrations. Maybe he needs to start a little bit higher. So this is also an entry point. Do your blood work, get a baseline reading, and see where the testosterone is at, and then maybe double that or triple that, right? That's usually a good starting point. That's something you should be able to tolerate. And keep in mind that even if you have 1200 nanograms per deciliter naturally, doubling or tripling that is usually accomplished with 250, maybe 300 milligrams of testosterone per week. So you don't need to start at 500, especially if you have a natural level of 300 nanograms per deciliter, because that's going to maybe put you 10 times, 15 times higher. And well, it's a large jump, so you should be able to expect some side effects from that. Now, this entry point of testosterone that you decide to take is an entry point to assess how you're going to respond to exogenous testosterone, because a lot of physiological changes are going to occur. You're going to downregulate your HPTA, right? The hypothalamic pituitary testes axis is going to downregulate. You're no longer producing testosterone, estradiol, and all the intermediary hormones which are produced in the testicles. That is no longer occurring unless you're supplementing with HMG or going with ACG because it's cheaper and easier to source, right? To keep a portion of the HPTA going. So at least now you have some sort of testicular function going on, and you're topping off your testosterone production and estradiol production in testicles with a little bit of exogenous testosterone, which will aromatase into estradiol as well, right? Do a little bit of blood work 4 weeks into that, and then assess where your levels are at. See where your results are at, and see if you were able to mitigate some of the side effects. Then you can always increase the dose. And maybe you don't even need to increase the dose for the first 12 weeks. Maybe those 250 milligrams a test, 200 tests, 150 tests, or maybe 300 tests, wherever you start, plus the ACG or the HMG or not, or the DHA and pregnenolone supplementation, because your HPTA was non-responsive and you did the ACG protocol and your testicles were non-responsive, then you need to look into the DHA and pregnenolone supplementation protocol going forward. Because it doesn't matter how much ACG you take, your testicles are not cooperating and not really producing any testosterone, estradiol, or somewhat improved fertility with ACG therapy. So whatever dose you end up with and the results you're going to get, that is just an entry point. An entry point where you get minimal side effects, at least manageable ones, and the results will manifest, the gains will manifest, the strength will come, the growth will come, because there's only so much you can grow. There's only so much testosterone you can recruit. And again, the entry point of how you start your first cycle highly determines the outcome, not necessarily the dose. More is not better. More is not better, guys. So why not try to get some results from 250 tests or wherever dose you start with? And then once that dose does not give you results anymore, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 13 weeks, maybe 6 months into this first cycle, then you can go to 500 milligrams a test. All right, certainly a lot more cost effective, less micromanagement and crisis management compared to starting with 500 tests. And probably the same results, because even though 500 milligrams a test might look like it gives better results regarding glycogen retention, mineral retention, volumization, protein expression to a certain extent, there's only so much you can actually retain from that after you lower the dose, right? So let's say you gain 10 pounds or 10 kilos. That's not only 10 kilos of muscle. Maybe you actually gain 5 kilos of muscle, which you can also gain on 250 milligrams of test. And the rest is just puff, bloat, water retention, stuff that's going to disappear when you lower the dose. Right? So all these things you have to think about. And an oral kickstart is never required. Never. What is required is patience. Patience. That's all you need. Patience, patience, patience. Building a physique takes time. And forcing it will usually result in side effects. Forcing it with drugs will result in side effects. Forcing it with food will cause side effects. And forcing it with over-the-counter supplements will cause some side effects as well, right? I'm sure some of you guys tried 20 grams of creatine per day. And that will give you a moon face also, right? There's an effective dose of creatine being 5 grams, 10 grams per day. There's also no need for a creatine kickstart. And you have a loading phase, 10 grams of creatine per day, and then you reduce to a maintenance phase, being 5 grams of creatine per day. Chill, relax, be patient. Muscle is only going to come at a certain rate, and you don't need to double dip or overdose or take more than your body can recruit and utilize in the synthesis and the building of new muscle tissue. So start low and build your way up. That's basically the conclusion of this video. And if you start high, which in my opinion 500 milligrams a test and a DIANABOL Kickstart is a pretty high dose. Again, 30 milligrams DIANABOL per day is 210 milligrams DIANABOL per week. So that's 710 milligrams of steroids per week. It's quite a hefty dose, to be honest. Quite a hefty dose. I have guys on their third or fourth cycle that run 700 milligrams of a combination of Test, Primo, and Anavar. And trust me, they look a million times better than the guys that started with 500 Test and 30 milligrams of D-ball. Because they've had more time under their belt, more time, more experience with performance-enhancing drugs, and they slowly build up their physique because they understand that building muscle takes a little bit longer than the DIANABOL Kickstart is going to potentiate. If you want to start with something, start with Taurinabol. Taurinabol, because it doesn't metabolize into Methyl-Estradiol. And it's also been shown to be a little bit less liver toxic. Now, do you need 30 milligrams Taurinabol per day to get started on your first cycle? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. 10 milligrams is more than enough. I'm sure some of you guys are going to flame me for this. 10 milligrams is never enough. But it is enough when you're just getting started with hormones, because even hormone replacement therapy dosages of testosterone and 10 milligrams of Taurinabol on top is super physiological. Unless you're one of the select 0.0001% with a natural testosterone concentration of 1,500 nanograms per deciliter, or at least over 1,000 nanograms per deciliter. So if you fall into that category, congratulations, you're the genetic elite. You might want to double that concentration and go with 250 milligrams a test, right? Because that gives me 2,800 nanograms per deciliter on my blood work from a single administration. So that's at the highest point. And of course, it tapers off over the week. But for the majority of the week, you'll have super physiological levels of testosterone in your bloodstream. Start low. You can always build your way up. The whole idea to start low is to mitigate the side effects and just get results. Because you will get results, whether you go in high dose or on anything over endogenous production. And for that, you probably don't need much. So this allows you to walk away with a good experience. And let's be honest, we never walk away. We go on, and then, maybe a decade later we walk away because we lose interest, or we want to get our wife pregnant, or we have a health complication that we got in the meantime that we now need to resolve. So you're not really walking away. You're walking through this performance-enhancing drug journey that you now just started. And why not start somewhere where the initial cycle only yields results and side effects that you can manage? No lower back bumps, no moon face, no crazy water retention, no shin splints, no edema, no acne, or at least manageable and tolerable acne that you can take care of with a little bit better hygiene or changing your food selection. And again, I've seen, especially in my immediate surroundings, people that started with 500 tests in the DIANABOL Kickstart, and they get boilers on their back. They get horrible back knee that bursts and leaks through their clothes. So they have to wear black shirts all the time. And I've seen horror pictures online as well. Right? All these hormonal fluctuations that contribute to acne. And then this methyl-estradiol and the compounding estradiol and perhaps poor dieting strategies that all compounds in the worst acne you can possibly imagine, to the point your face looks like the moon. And your back looks like, the moon as well, but you can cover that at least with a black shirt. All these things you need to think about. And hopefully you can just start somewhere where none of these side effects manifest. And then as you get more developed, as your body starts to recruit or has the capacity to recruit more testosterone and perhaps an oral on top, that's when you increase the dose. I mean, you earn it. You earn that 500 milligrams. You earn that DIANABOL or Anavar, Taurinabol, Anadrol, whatever oral you decide to run, you earn that. Because in my opinion, it's still better to run an oral at the end of your off season and sprinkle that in on top when you really need to go through strength plateaus, instead of starting with it. And now you already create a little bit of liver stress, not setting yourself up for a healthy outcome at the end, where you can maybe do another cycle of orals because your liver is now already a little bit impaired. Right? Double dipping, guys. So I'll leave it at that. This video was probably already way too long. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're looking for the most comprehensive guides to bodybuilding pharmacology, you can find the ebooks on my website, vigoroussteve.com/shop. Always available for personalized advice. You can find the rates to consultations in my consultations section. Contact me directly if you're interested. Follow me on Instagram at VigorousSteve. Front double bicep for the Vigorous crew. Low dose, high yield, high results. And when the results start tapering, you can always bump up the dose. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you in the next video.